Good afternoon. You're very welcome to the lunchtime session, How Can Businesses Help to Create Accessible Workplaces and Society for Autistic People? My name is Carolann McGann and I'm Head of Skills and Social Policy with Ibec, Ireland's largest business representative organisation, and I'm delighted to chair this session today. So before I introduce our wonderful panel, I wanted to give you a little bit of context about this session and talk to you about the roadmap for autism and employment. The roadmap, which launched today, was co-created by Ibec and As I Am to outline a route to improve employment opportunities for autistic individuals in Ireland, emphasising the need for inclusive workplaces and collaborative efforts between government, businesses and the sector. Ireland's economic success has always been built on the strength of its people, and as we look to the future of work in a rapidly evolving global economy, our competitiveness and our sustainability will be enhanced by ensuring that all our talent is engaged. We're all too well aware that Ireland's disability employment rate at 32.6% is nearly 20% lower than the EU average. Only 16% of autistic adults aged 25 to 64 are in paid employment, while 96% of autistic individuals believe securing desired jobs is more difficult compared to neurotypical individuals. This results in an untapped workforce and the wasted talent of many autistic people. So clearly a comprehensive societal response is needed to empower autistic individuals and support employers in creating accessible workplaces. The roadmap seeks to highlight the systemic, social and practical barriers to employment encountered by autistic people, ranging from AI-driven processes that may disadvantage at recruitment stage, inaccessible work environments, disclosure fears, and lack of autism-specific support services which can hamper opportunities. And then it lays out a multifaceted approach with recommendations for As I Am, such as to develop an inclusive employer index and industry-specific charters and standards on autism-accessible employment. For employers, such as to create inclusive recruitment strategies and work environments and invest in neuro-inclusive design. And for government, such as additional targeted funding and supports, building understanding and acceptance through communication campaigns and cross-departmental coordination on policies to overcome siloed approaches that can result in issues being dropped. This roadmap offers a practical, forward-looking guide for employers, policymakers and society more generally to create a more equitable labour market, one where autistic people are not just welcomed, but valued for their perspectives and contributions. The roadmap confronts barriers head-on. It presents a collaborative vision, drawing on evidence-based practices and the collective input of stakeholders. It challenges outdated assumptions, proposes actionable solutions, and sets out a path to the labour market that is equitable and future-proofed. It highlights the opportunity and responsibility that employers and government have to co-create the way forward with the autism sector for real success. But the roadmap is not just a policy document. It is a strong call to action and a commitment to building a society where every individual has the opportunity to thrive. Which leads me nicely onto our panel today, which will delve into how business can play their part and help to create those accessible workplaces and societies. So please join me in welcoming Carolann Lennon, CEO of Salesforce Ireland, Moyagh Murdock, CEO of Insurance Ireland, Niamh Biddulph from the Scientific Committee and on PUST, and Dennis Doolan, Head of People Experience from AIB. So to start us off, and before I start asking our panelists some questions, I would like to ask them to give a brief introduction to themselves. So I will start with Carolann.
Thank you, Cara. Hello, everyone. My name is Carolann Lennon, and I'm the CEO of Salesforce in Ireland. And for those of you who don't know Salesforce, we're a technology company, and actually just this week we have celebrated our 25th anniversary of Salesforce in Ireland. We were the first office that Salesforce set up outside the US. So I think, you know, in some ways, why would I be here? Because I'm here because equality is one of the core values that Salesforce has. It's been a value since Salesforce was established back in 1999, and I think it drives everything that we do to try and make sure that our workspaces and our products are accessible and inclusive for everyone. And we actually have a global office of accessibility. And there's a team there called our Disabilities at Work team, and their job is to support any of our colleagues who have disabilities, but also our colleagues that are kind of neurodivergent. So delighted to be here and delighted to be representing Salesforce.
Thanks very much, Carolann. Dennis.
Thanks, Cara. Hi, everyone. My name is Dennis Doolan. I'm working with AIB, and we're one of Ireland's pillar banks. And my role is people experience, which covers culture, well-being, engagement, but also inclusion and diversity. So I suppose that's why I'm here. Because similarly, we have a value which is to be one team, and also a value which is show respect. So we try and do things that live those two values, and we wrap everything we do related to inclusion under a banner called universal inclusion. And the idea being, of course, that anyone who encounters the bank or works with the bank would feel a sense of belonging, a sense of being included. And likewise, that, you know, maybe for our staff as well, that we all have a responsibility to create that environment, which I know is something we'll come back to. And we act on that internally, so we do have obviously reasonable accommodations. We also, you know, do things like we try and make sure our recruitment processes are very inclusive, and we run regular campaigns to try and promote understanding around all forms of difference, including neurodiversity and including autism. And then, of course, externally, we do also try and live up to things by, recently, for example, we have had all of our branches, we have 170 branches, they're all accredited with As I Am as being autism friendly. So try and act both internally and externally to be as inclusive and accessible as we can.
That's great, thanks Dennis. Niamh, and I believe we've a lovely photo of you.
Yes, you might see it in just a few moments. Hi everyone, my name is Niamh Biddulph, and I work as a HR administrator in Pulse, and I am also a member of the scientific committee, and I will be sharing my journey as to how I accessed employment with Pulse and delving into the sort of supports that I received when I had gotten into the workplace. And so from there, I hope that you look forward to the panel discussion.
Thanks, Niamh. Moyagh.
Thanks, Cara. My name is Moyagh Murdock. I'm the Chief Executive of Insurance Ireland. Insurance Ireland is the representative body, not unlike Ibec, and we represent all of the insurers in Ireland across all sectors: health, life, general, international, reinsurance, so very broad spectrum of members. But I am originally an engineer, a mechanical engineer by profession, so very different journey to arrive here. And I've come through trains, planes and automobiles. I've grown up with a house full of fellas when I was younger, 5 brothers, no sisters, so I can empathise with the challenges when you're in a minority group and people have prejudged perceptions of skills, attributes and abilities. But have persevered throughout my career and have really enjoyed my journey to here. And I never thought I'd end up in insurance, but I'm very much an advocate for diversity, inclusion, and certainly the conference today is a great opportunity to bring the message to even more insurance companies who have really embraced the whole As I Am initiative, and we have our own charter just recently launched as well. So certainly this really resonates with me, and I want to wish you all the best to everybody in the conference. Is going really well, so thank you.
That's great, thank you. So maybe Carolann, I might come to you first just to start us off. You've got a very proud track record in championing equality in the world of work, and we know progress has been made over the last few decades, yet autistic people continue to face pervasive barriers. Why do you think this is, and how important is a coalition of business leaders to actually making a change in that space?
Yeah, so I think, so yeah, in the past I've focused a lot on, gender inequality, and I think, a lot of that is about, sharing the data, driving the awareness, reminding people that there's a lot done, but a lot kind of more to do. And I think I've also been 15 years on the Board of Trustees of Special Olympics Ireland again, and again great work being done there by Special Olympics, but again always trying to do more and kind of raise awareness. So I think you have to start with awareness and kind of the data, and in prepping for today, and you said it yourself in your kind of opening remarks, because I would have thought autism awareness would be quite high, but then when I looked at some of the stats, the high levels of autistic people who are unemployed or underemployed, I think 58% I read from Irish Jobs of people, afraid to tell their employer about a diagnosis, only a quarter of employers knowing what's available to kind of help their staff who are autistic, and many of them not having any kind of policies around that. So I think one of the challenges is then that awareness levels, and I think sometimes people then they kind of get nervous, employers get nervous, I don't know what to do, I don't know if there's great organizations like As I Am out there that could help me, that have done this work with other people. So they don't know, they think it's going to be very difficult. They probably also think it's going to be kind of very expensive, and what am I going to have to change, and what am I going to have to do? So I think the first thing is to get that awareness up. I think also to collaborate, to understand there's lots of great organizations out there that can help. I've never been afraid of copying anyone else's good policy if they have a good one. Be a fast follower. So I think there's definitely something to be done with business, with government, with Ibec, with the NGOs to kind of say, look, this is best practice, this is template, this is a workbook, this is how you get started. I think there's still obviously quite a bit of work to be done there to educate businesses and to help them. Because I think everyone knows that both for companies, for governments, to have a diverse and inclusive organization is good for all of us. So I think people know that, but I suspect they just probably don't quite know where to start about making that a reality in their office. And like in Salesforce, like we started with recruitment. We started by training our managers about inclusive recruitment policies. Starting small. Again, we benefit because we're a big company from our Office of Accessibility, but designing that into our company. So starting with some things and then building out from there. So I think there's a lot of work to be done around collaboration and sharing.
Yeah, and I think you've hit the nail on the head. Businesses clearly have a role, and most have a desire to recruit and retain autistic talent. But this is probably only possible through partnership with the NGO sector and government support. How do you think deeper collaboration can be facilitated? And you've touched on some, but are there other big barriers facing business that we need support with?
Yeah, I think it really is about knowledge, because like if you look at some of the things that you can do that are quite practical, they're actually not that expensive. You just need to know what to do, and maybe they're not that kind of difficult. So I think it is about that sharing best practice. Maybe there is an opportunity to bring businesses together in some kind of a forum on a regular basis, and to make sure that is shared, and then to measure the progress in the spirit of what gets measured gets done, and to see like particularly like if you look at on gender, there's an awful lot more measurement now. We track it all the time, and we might have started off tracking one measure, now we track all kinds of measures or whatever, so that we really measure progress. So I think maybe there's a bit of work to be done about that what do the measures look like? How can we see that we're making progress? And also make sure that we're talking to the community, so that we get their feedback about what's best practice, kind of what's working. And one of our products, we had the neurodiverse community help us in terms of design. And again, if you think of an employer, if you can design this in from the start, that you don't have to think about it. You're getting it from the beginning. So I think there's definitely some work to be done there as well.
I think absolutely, and some of the asks in the roadmap certainly touch on a number of what you've just called out there, including the data and the dearth of data that we could do with getting a little bit better at. But it leads us lovely to Niamh. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your employment journey to date, and maybe what accommodations in the workplace you find make a difference.
And would it be all right if we can have that picture up again, please? So I've been working in on Pulse as a HR administrator for over 5 years this year, and my most recent change that I've had to deal with in the work that I do is when on Pulse decided to change the way that we work with our particular tasks. So instead of having everything being in, manually done up, it's all automated online with this new go live that you can see here. But before all this, I used to work in the GPO, but in the midst of the pandemic, then in 2021, I was able to resume with my internship, and I was working from home at the time. And from there, I was able to achieve getting a permanent part-time contract. And I've been with the same team ever since, and I would never look back on it because my team, who have been very supportive from the very beginning, have really helped me to sort of help me build on my clerical skills and to give myself a bit of confidence. And so it has really been an amazing opportunity to sort of get that independence being in the workplace, and as well as to be able to show my potential with my work colleagues. And I believe that that same thing can be done with all businesses across the country or even worldwide. And so, to wrap it up here from my side, we had also had moved headquarters, so we're not in the GPO anymore. We've been in the EXO since 23, and I think that with all this change coming in, we're now at a very crucial time dealing with Christmas casuals. So there is a big recruitment drive out there, and for any autistic person who is looking to come and work with OnPulse as a Christmas casual, please feel free to get in touch with our talent team. I will just put it out here, talent@onpulse.ie, and we can see about getting you all recruited as soon as we can.
Excellent, excellent. Niamh, can I ask, what would your message be to employers who are considering becoming more autism friendly? Would you have particular advice for them as to how to get started and what sort of things to be thinking about?
Yes, so for me, when I is working, I was given the option to work from home as well as to work in the office. And I think having the option to do hybrid working should be included for when employers are hiring new employees. When it comes to interviewing an autistic person, allow for extra time for them to get familiar with their surroundings, a time for them to be able to answer their questions. If they have any questions they want to ask, give them the freedom to ask away. And as well, if you are looking at sending out application forms for autistic people to apply, make sure that it's converted to plain English, because not everybody can read the full normalized application forms, so it'd be hard for them to understand particular questions they might have on the application forms. It is actually very crucial that we bring up this recruitment drive to include autistic people in the workforce, because it is our fundamental human right under the UN CRPD. It is also very important to recognize that we have a lot of potential to showcase our abilities, and that I think that having the likes of Salesforce, Insurance Ireland, and AIB included in amongst us on the panel today actually is showcasing the potential that we can have in collaborating with teams to include autistic people in the employment journey. And I really hope that everybody has the same chance in accessing employment, and I really hope that this will really bring out inspiration for a lot of people for many years to come.
Thanks, Niamh. Dennis, AIB is one of those organisations that is working to become a more autism-friendly organisation. That very much started with a focus on customer experience. What has been the impact, and maybe what learnings can it bring to AIB as a workplace?
Thanks, yeah. So I mentioned earlier, we have 170 branch locations around the island of Ireland. And when we looked at it, it's a bit like what Carolann was saying. Initially you think, oh my God, that's going to cost a fortune and it's going to take ages and ages. And actually neither was true. Once we looked at it, we had a lot of help from As I Am, from Adam and the team, and really got down to just what changes would we make in the sensory environment, what changes could we make in our communications, and we started to implement those. And as I say, thankfully, we became the first bank to have all of our branches accredited recently, and it's been brilliant. Like, one of our ambitions is to put all of our customers first, and I say all very deliberately there. We don't always get it right, just to acknowledge that, but we have had some. I asked, in advance of being on stage today, for a couple of examples of the kind of impacts that are happening. And I got two interesting examples back that I just thought I'd quickly share, just rather than talking in generalities. At one of our branches here in Dublin, actually, there was a lady came in with a younger person who was clearly quite distressed. And one of the staff members immediately went over and just said, look, we do have a quiet area, which is one of the things we introduced with the help of As I Am in every location. And as soon as they went over to the quiet area, we have a, as you can imagine, we have a kind of box of sensory items that someone can use. And it just calmed the situation fairly quickly. Turns out it was a grandmother with her grandson, and he had dropped his popcorn outside the branch door and was upset about that, as I would be, because I love my food. And yeah, so luckily, I think at the end, the grandmother turned around and said, look, that saved my day, because it was her only chance to get in and do the bit of banking that she needed to do. And like I say, didn't cost us an awful lot of time or money to put things like that in place. The second one then was, I'm not sure how international it is, but some people in Ireland might have a Just a Minute card, called Jam card, we call it. And all of our staff are trained to recognise those. So when two of our customers went in a different part of Ireland, really, really nervous customer, but had the Jam card. So again, the staff member kind of realised it straight away, took them aside, gave them a chance to, kind of settle themselves. And they actually said that they had been dreading going to the branch, and they'd put it off loads and loads of times. But from the reception they got, they kind of were able to get across what they needed to do and get through what they needed to do. So they left in a much better place than they came in. So like I say, I'm not going to for a second say we've got it all right. Look at us, aren't we great? I'm sure there's situations that's not happening still, but we're really determined to try and get better and address all those situations as much as we can. I do want to finish maybe by highlighting one thing that was a kind of an unexpected benefit for us, which was we have about 10,000 staff, and actually one of the benefits we've realised is during the training of the staff, it actually opened up a lot of really good discussions, inclusive discussions, open discussions. We have one staff member who has a teenager with autism, and actually learned two things in the training that they found very helpful in their own life then, in terms of their relationship with their teenager. And another lady who was just really, really emotional in the session, but just found the support from colleagues then being absolutely brilliant, because it was really the first time she'd been able to talk about it in a session with other colleagues, and it has made that just much more normalized ever since. So, really nice difference, I'd say, from our inclusion amongst our teams as well.
That's really great, and it really has that knock-on effect. It's often said that by creating an autism-friendly operational environment, you can create a better environment for all. Has that been your experience? And it sounds like definitely there's been elements of that coming through already. But also maybe what specific contributions are you seeing autistic people bringing to the world of work?
So I'll take it in two parts then, if that's okay. So I mentioned earlier the idea of universal inclusion and trying to be, involve everyone and include everyone. So we run regular campaigns doing that, and they are very much geared at the environment. I'm a bit like Carolann. I have a Special Olympics background. My sister is in Special Olympics, and I spent many years working with the organisation. And what that taught me was that really, unless you get the environment right, or close to right, you're wasting your time saying you're embracing diversity or you're trying to include people, because it just won't work. So most of our campaigns are quite general in terms of trying to open up conversations about autism, about neurodiversity, about other forms of difference. It's not just about disabilities or anything like that. So the campaigns are working. We actually we have this format called Team Talks, and we ran one during June, and 2,000 people took part, not all at once, in various teams over the month, but that was amazing, like to get 2,000 of the 10,000. I want to get to 8,000 out of the 10,000, just to be clear. But, we're getting there in terms of opening up the conversation. So I do think, yes, any measure we're taking, the recruitment one's a good example, Carolann mentioned it. The changes we've made in our recruitment process, I firmly believe, help everyone. They don't just help people with autism or people who are neurodiverse. They help everyone because we've simplified language, we've made it easier to apply for things. Our interview, everyone doing interviews in AIB is trained, so everyone who's hiring, is trained to recognize difference, to embrace it, to accept it, and to work their interviews around that. And then the language piece, someone mentioned language as well, I always believe the easy read versions, so-called, of things like strategy documents, they're the ones everybody uses. They're not the ones that are just for people with differences. To your second part of the question then, just to finish, I actually think it's really hard to answer it specifically, because I think Adam, I know Adam's over in the audience somewhere there, he always says, when you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And I think that's so true. In other words, we're really training our colleagues not to go in for the generalizations that, oh, they're good at numbers or good at this or good at that. You could be good at anything. It depends on what your own preferences and skills and capabilities are. So we're really trying to educate around that. So for me, the answer to what impact can it bring could be anything. Depends what we're looking for. And then the other kind of impact we're seeing, again, is on our own workforce, on people understanding difference, greater belonging coming from that, greater empowerment coming from that, and ultimately that's what allows us to deliver against our purpose, which is actually empowering people, meaning our customers and our colleagues in our communities, to build a sustainable future. So it all contributes towards that.
Thanks, Dennis. I think you're spot on in terms of that human-centred or person-centred approach being absolutely vital. There is no one-size-fits-all. Yeah. Moyagh, if I can turn to you. Insurance Ireland has made a very significant move now to publish a new industry charter on accessible employment for autistic people. Why was this a step the industry decided to take, and what impact do you believe it'll have?
Thanks, Cara. Well, first of all, it's important to say that Insurance Ireland, we are very aware of the industry's perception and reputation. We wouldn't have the most positive image out there. I'd say, Dennis, we're right up there with the banks when it comes to the most favoured industry in the country. But there is a genuine desire to try and improve on that and improve outcomes for consumers. And obviously, I see it, the members of Insurance Ireland see it, that it's a great place for a career as well. And in Insurance Ireland, we have initiatives there that we believe that, will benefit the businesses and benefit, the member firms that we have. And we have a really active inclusion task force. Almost 30 members are part of that task force with different subgroups. And we have a small team in Insurance Ireland, despite the number of members that we have in the industry. it's only about 22 of us, but we still have a very diverse workforce. So the Inclusion Task Force is a very active and proactive forum that we bring ideas to the fore and try and develop them into initiatives. And last year we conducted a survey with members to ask them what they wanted to focus on, what were their priorities. And the top 3 that came out of that were generational diversity, because obviously the industry is really suffering, maybe a little bit, but like banking too, Dennis, that it's an aging workforce. We do not have generational diversity across that. The other one they highlighted for focus was disabilities. And then, of course, the third one was neurodiversity. And that's probably the start of it. But as I said, we have a small team, and I'm going to give Mary some credit for this. Mary is our CFO and has first-hand experience with autism in terms of her own close family. So it was really a case of discussing it more at senior management and deciding, is there something we could do here more proactive? And as you know, Cara, Ibec in the shape of the FSI, ourselves, BPFI and Irish funds had already really been successful with our Women in Finance Charter. And as an engineer, I am a firm believer of what gets measured gets done. So it really was a natural progression to say, let's have something that we can actually roadmap for members that they can sign up to, similar to the Women in Finance, because that has made a difference, and there's a number of KPIs getting measured across the financial services sector. So likewise, why not do it for autism and neurodiversity? And so we as an industry are really also, there is also the business aspect that it's in our own business interest to do something here, because despite employing over 35,000 people and having a thriving insurance sector in Ireland, we are still suffering from a shortage of staff as well. So really, there's a, this is a two-way street, because we recognise the barriers for people with autism, the barriers to entry into employment for anybody with a neurodiversity. So this was really, it seemed, this is a no-brainer really, let's go and do it. And I have to say, I was amazed at how quickly members adopted it, because, they're all global companies. There's only a couple of Indigenous Irish firms there, and most of these firms that are in Insurance Ireland are governed by global parent companies, and they want to crawl all over everything before putting their name to it. They have to put things through their internal governance processes. This really took off very quickly, and we have a great collection of members already signed up to it, and you'll see them out there at the desk, and I have no doubt we'll get a lot more. So that was really the genesis of it, and again, credit to Mary for bringing it to our attention, and it's just going to keep going, and it's going to help both our internal capacity and competency, and also our members, but also I think it'll bring better customer outcomes for whatever area of insurance our members are in as well.
And can you give us a flavour of what's in the charter? What sort of things are companies signing up to do?
Well, they're basically signing up to ensure that they, as Carolann mentioned and Dennis mentioned, that they have procedures and processes internally that ensure that they look at recruitment, look at environment, the operating area that people are working in, that are conducive to a neurodiverse workforce and people with autism. And I don't want to be lighthearted about it, but I did today even say to myself, what should I wear for this panel discussion? What would, suit the topic? And I I used our co-pilot to say, what should I wear? Should I wear the check jacket or the pink jacket? And co-pilot is definitely learning and it's training, and says the pink jacket is very warm and inclusive and would be a much better choice than a check grey jacket for the day's event. Sorry for anybody in grey or check. But I think really the learning is you know, make yourselves aware, adopt the training, and that's what we have done in Insurance Ireland. We have already had a number of sessions of the As I Am training, and it starts to make you think, okay, everybody's different in your workforce, and you need to stop and take that minute as well yourself to think, you know, is this something that I should be conscious of, and you know, give accommodation to someone that might be autistic, and that I don't judge them, don't jump to conclusions without knowing exactly what's happening. So really, it's training employers to recognise it and to ensure they embrace the talent and the potential within the workforce and the untapped resources that are outside that could be potential employees going forward.
Great. The charter is something that features, excuse me, in the roadmap that we launched today as an example of best practice and something for other industries to consider engaging with. How important do you think it is for having that coordinated national approach maybe to reducing autism unemployment? Is that something you think is very essential?
I would support that totally, because it can just become something that gets pigeonholed into one sector or one industry or one company, and having a national approach to it. And the Women in Finance Charter is an across-sectoral charter, and that is now even growing outside of the actual financial services companies themselves. A lot of our consultancy firms and other affiliated services that work with those sectors are adopting that, and that just shows how much potential it has to bring to the whole employment market across all areas. So I think having that national approach can shortcut the adoption of the charter, and it can shortcut trying to get buy-in from just one sector or one company, that it actually, you know, it's business. People are competitive. If somebody thinks they're going to get better chance for recruiting, you know, capable, competent people, and they can only do that by having these measures in place, they will jump on it. Definitely very competitive employment market out there, and employers are looking to whatever initiative will help retain staff but also attract staff, and they all want that accolade of being the best place to work. So I think having a national charter will certainly, you know, ensure that that is accelerated, and it means you can see the results much quicker than just going about it piecemeal.
Absolutely. I might pause for a second, my questions, to see if there's any questions from the floor. We have a little bit of time. Certainly, yes. Take your time, you're grand.
Hi. Hello. Hi. My name is Barbara Swiss. I represent Lithuania's NGO Autism Friendly. My question is for the managers of the companies. What's your experience, the training about autism awareness for, let's say, companies' employees, like for middle-level managers? Is it mandatory or not? If not, the question is, how do you motivate people to attend those trainings? Because my 5-year experience with working with companies is that it's more like only those people come who are either have a loved one, a relative, or they are neurodivergent people themselves, and we have a 3,000 employees company and 50 people attending the training. So that's my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. Would anybody like to? Carolann?
So I think it probably depends on the training. I think if you're a recruiter or a manager that recruits, then I think it is mandatory, because this is how we recruit around here, and we want to make sure that we're being inclusive and we follow our policies and processes. I think, broader, it's not mandatory in Salesforce, but we actually have, and it's funny, when I heard Dennis talking about the employees or whatever, I think that's a great resource, because if you get push from employees, that's another way of driving something to an organization. So we have what we call business resource groups in Salesforce, And we've got one called Ability Force, and the lady who leads that, Maeve, is in the audience. And we've also got Neuroforce, but there you get employees who may be autistic or maybe just allies, but driving those initiatives and driving the training and driving awareness and driving programs and bringing in speakers and, you know, and talking to our HR guys or whatever. So I think that's a huge resource that all companies have that they can kind of tap in. So but in terms of mandatory or not, I think it depends on your role and what the training is. But employees, and we've quite a young workforce in Salesforce, kind of early in career, and they want to work for companies who are interested in more than just the bottom line or whatever. So we get great buy-in, and they drive change and they drive, you know, momentum. So I think, you know, that's a really important resource that companies should tap into.
Great stuff. Moyagh, yeah. Yeah, this is something that I have discussed actually with the central bank. It's not compulsory in the insurance industry, but definitely I believe we should be looking towards something that actually there is an incentive there for employers to do it, because DE&I is a big, it's very important to the central bank that regulates all of the industry, and the industry is a highly regulated sector, and you must carry out certain training every year, and Dennis, you'll know about that. CPD training, it's called. So you get points and you must meet your minimum level of CPD every year. And I've had this conversation with the central bank. You're there pushing DEI and inclusivity and equity and diversity, but yet you don't incentivize employers to put training on. And we all recognize, following the big crash, that there was a lack of diversity, a lack of diverse thinking that caused that to some extent. And so I think, and this is one for Adam, maybe if he's got a few people he knows in high places, that, you know, it's definitely worth considering to make it somehow, human nature is, there needs to be an incentive to get more uptake of it. And if it was a CPD accredited training course, that would go some way of saying it's not necessarily mandatory, but certainly you will see much more uptake. Strongly encouraged.
I'll just add briefly, because I can see there's more questions on the way. I just have two suggestions to your question. One is, rather than have mandatory, maybe training related to inclusion and diversity that was specific to one aspect, we went for a mandatory and got approved for a mandatory training that was broadly about inclusion and diversity, and then we referenced specific types of cohorts or groups within that. And that was very difficult to do because, as Moyagh was saying, we're in a regulated industry where a lot of training is mandated by the regulator. But I'm very glad to say that every second year we do have that mandatory module, which is broadly about inclusion and diversity. And then exactly what Carolann said, the second suggestion is to look at targeted groups then more specifically. So in our case, it's hiring managers. Every hiring manager must do hiring manager training. That includes training on bias and discrimination and so on. And also our frontline staff also do mandatory training that includes information about unconscious bias and so on. So whilst we're not mandatory across the 10,000, we're getting there. So we'll keep going by stealth. So that would be the only two things I would add.
Great. I think also would be much more interesting than taxation and regulation and whatever the central bank mandates there, you know.
Definitely. We have another question.
Actually, it's not a question. It's more than advice. My name is Moyagh. I'm the CEO of a company that's called JoyDo, and we employ 60 people on the spectrum. What I suggest for you, do not reinvent the wheel. Learn from what's happening, at least in the US. What we're selling is what are called AI square. It is artificial intelligence combined with autism intelligence. And I'm a little bit going to disappoint a lot of people over here because I think that neurodiversity is not a good thing. Autism is autism. ADHD, ADHD, two different things. People with autism bring unique abilities. And the unique abilities that they bring, this is the one that you have to look for. You look for talent. If you look for guilt, and you look for someone to say, okay, you have to employ X amount, and you want to say, okay, this is my guilt money for society, be open about it. But you're looking for talent. And people with autism has talent that other people don't have. I'll give you one example. We're working in radiology, and we train our employees to help radiologists in identify, do early detection of breast cancer in women. We increase the accuracy of the radiologists by 10%. We have 10 people that work on this, in this study, for 42 weeks. And they found, each one of them, 42 women that the radiologists missed. And they found it in stage 1. Multiply it by 10, it's 420. So they saved the life of 420 women. It was a win for them, it was a win for the radiologist, and it was a win for the woman. That's what you have to look for. Now, there is a map already written. It's called Autism at Work. Just Google it.
Brilliant.
The difference is you have to look into new employment model. You cannot ask someone that has autism to come to your organization and go to an interview because 80% of them don't speak. So you have to figure out, be creative about employment model if you really want the talent. And this is the place that talent exists. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's great, and we will be Googling. So just keen for our next 2 questions. Okay. Please, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Thank you to the panel. Just to say, first of all, I work very closely. My name is Mary Mitchell. I work in Dublin Dunleary Education and Training Board. And I work with adults to bridge that gap between education and employment. And I also work with Unpost as well. And I will be contacting you, Moyagh, now that I know you're in insurance. But just to say that, okay, one of the things that I find, or we find in the community, is that they have, you know, the individual has the skills. One of the biggest gaps is, and I know Dennis mentioned it there, was the interview. The interviews that they're going for is, they get a knockback, they have the skills, and this is time after time, and we do help prepare for the interviews. But I don't feel the interviews are neurodiverse friendly. That's, for me, is some of them are competency based, and it's all just churning back stuff, and that's okay, but I don't feel that they're neurodiverse based. And I suppose, Cara, I'm just thinking of the different industries and the different businesses, that maybe that's something, just thinking what the panel thinks, that's something we could work on to make them more neurodiverse based on the person, as opposed to, you know, the kind of charter or just the routine. Just making people that are employing aware of that, you know. So
thank you so much, and it's such an important one, and it's one we've actually featured in the roadmap. So you're already ahead of the curve. So really appreciate you making that input, and we'll certainly be bringing that back. Okay. Thank you.
All right,
Thanks so much. And our last
question. Hi, folks. So my question is just about performance and results. So we're obviously you're very high-end companies. You're dealing with finances. So there's an expectation there, if a person is autistic, whatever, to perform at that level. So it's performance and result, and inclusion is kind of the line kind of drawn down the middle. So it's I've worked, like, I'm autistic, I'm in the civil service, I've worked on the financial system and stuff like that. I've made the mistakes, I've gotten the criticism from it, but is it, like, obviously we're placing expectations first. We want the best people to work, or are we trying to have strategies to have people come in and be given more of a chance and given more leeway? So essentially, let's say it's a soccer game. Imagine you lose the game 1-0, but you had 80% of the possession. So essentially, you did the things at work, but you weren't quite close. And then you're looking at the inclusion, the autistics, and you're trying to adapt. So the question to summarize, how much leeway would you give in terms of performance and result to an autistic person at the level, the company level that you're at?
Thank you very much for that. I might actually just take the last question as well, if that's okay, because I might pose it then to the whole panel. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Alan Cox. I have a question for the panel in relation to the use of automated technology in terms of interviewing for candidates, and the use of AI, which can discriminate against autistic people, autistic traits. And I'm just wondering what the panel's view is on that.
So if I can throw the two questions open, would anybody like to start us off with either one?
I might have to take the second one, obviously, because we're
yes, certainly, Carolann.
Technology company, and obviously, a big AI wave at the moment, and we're very focused on it. And there's loads of positive things about AI, but the downside is, that potential bias kind of that's in there. And I suppose, so again, from a Salesforce point of view, like we're working really hard to be eyes wide open to those potential biases. And one of the ways we think we can, manage that is by having, a diverse set of humans who are, writing the policies, building what we call our trust layer, and doing all those kind of things so that we get the right outcomes that are supportive of everybody, and not, the potential outcomes that aren't good for anybody. So I think it is a real issue. It's certainly high on our agenda in Salesforce in terms of that we do that fairly and well. And we, as I said, we have a trust layer that we really work hard on to try and eliminate those kind of biases, whatever. But we also think having a diverse population of people is one great way to help us with that. Yeah.
Great. Niamh?
So just to follow up on the first part of that question, Pulse has a reasonable accommodation policy where if you have anything where you're requesting to work from home or you need extra technology to help with working, we can provide with those sort of supports there. So we do try to accommodate assistive technology for any autistic person who is looking to work with us here at Pulse. And I think as well, we also have a disability policy where we encourage as many of our employees to disclose their disability. And this is only just so that Pulse can push in a report to say what percentage of disabled people have access to employment. And we actually have a target in reaching at least 6% of having disabled people to work in Pulse. And I think that having a disability policy as well as a reasonable accommodation policy can be really inclusive. And Pulse is a business partner with the Trinity Centre for People with Intellectual Disabilities. That's how I was able to access my employment with Pulse. So I think that the more business partners can partner up with TCPID and similar third level education institutions in the future, the more likely we can have more autistic people accessing employment. And I think it'll be really beneficial for everybody across the board.
Thank you, Niamh. Just in the interest of time, Dennis, I might give you the last word.
No problem. I'm just wanted to build on Niamh's answer in relation to the first question. Thank you for such an honest question. It definitely happens at the moment where, someone's performance might be questioned. And what we've tried to put a lot of our emphasis on is what we've realized is, even though we have the reasonable accommodations, policies and so on, is that people don't know about them. And often our people leaders mightn't know about it. So we're putting a lot of effort to try and close that gap by making sure that people leaders are aware that not that we're required, but that we want to do reasonable accommodations. And secondly, then trying to make the general workforce aware that we now have, just thanks to Aoife, who's in the front row there, the ability for people to tell us about themselves on our HR systems. I'm deliberately trying to not use the word disclose, because I don't like the word. It has a real negative connotation. We're empowering people, giving them a chance to tell us about themselves, including if they are neurodiverse, so that we then have the ability to say, okay, how many people who are neurodiverse do we have? What are we doing for them? Can we do more? And like say down to the individual situations that the people leader is aware, and make sure those things are put in place so that there is proper leeway allowed if someone is struggling with something initially, because generally what we'll always find is with the right supports, people will get there.
Thanks very much, Dennis. As always, time is against us, and I think we could have gone on for quite more time. So all is left for me to do is to thank our panelists, Carolann, Niamh, Dennis and Moyagh. Thank you so much for your attention and for the fantastic questions. And if I can put out a call for action for business to consider adopting and implementing the roadmap today so that we can all play our part. Thank you very much.